my name is Venera-Mihaela COJOCARIU. I am professor at Vasile Alecsandri University of Bacău, Romania.
Hello, my name is Ioana BOGHIAN. I am lecturer at Vasile Alecsandri University of Bacău, Romania.
And together we will present you our research, Urban-Rural Workplace, a relevant factor in manifesting intercultural sensitivity.
First of all, we would like to present several ideas that will comprise the motivation for our research and what determined us to conduct this research. So in this context of a modern globalized world, there is a need for all people to build and develop skills necessary for effective communication with individuals of different socio-cultural backgrounds. Even more so as the globalized world widens the opportunities for intercultural exchange and contact. In this globalized context, one category of professionals that need to meet today's increased demand for higher level intercultural communication skills is that of teachers at all levels of the educational process. In 2020, the percentages of Romanians with urban and rural residents have been recorded as being quite close. Hence, we believe that all studies concerning educational matters and solutions to educational issues in the Romanian context should approach the research problem by considering the two different contexts in which education takes place, namely urban and rural. Our key concept for this research is intercultural sensitivity, which is defined as a professional requirement for approaching the teaching career in a way that is compatible with international and national recommendations on ensuring the right to education to all children, irrespective of their socio-economic cultural background. Intercultural sensitivity can be defined as an individual's ability to build a positive emotion towards understanding and appreciating cultural differences. This positive emotion is the basis for manifesting an appropriate and effective behavior within intercultural communication. Intercultural sensitivity requires that the person has an inquisitive mind, is interested in other culture, has a curious and intelligent approach to interpersonal relationships that supports the discovery of cultural differences. The person has a desire to self-regulate behavior as a sign of respect for the people of other cultures. A meaningful distinction that we considered drawing is that between intercultural sensitivity, which is the ability to distinguish and experience relevant cultural differences, and intercultural competence, the ability to think and act in intercultural appropriate ways. Greater intercultural sensitivity is thus associated with greater potential for exercising intercultural competence.
The sample consisted of 206 teachers working at various educational levels in school units from urban and rural areas. There were 103 respondents with rural working background and 103 respondents with urban working background. The research tool was an adapted Romanian version of the Intercultural Sensitivity Scale Chen and Starosta 2000, a 24-item Likert scale with 5 answer options. Subscale: A. The desire to interact in a constructive manner, 4 items. B. Respect for cultural differences and diversity, 6 items. C. Confidence in interactions with people from other cultures, 5 items. D. Pleasure produced by interactions, 4 items. E. Attention paid to interaction, 3 items. And the last, avoidance of labels, stereotypes, and prejudices, 2 items.
The methodology also included the specific hypotheses associated with a set of 2 objectives for each of them and 1 general hypothesis. This is a study which is part of a wider research that aims to identify teacher training practices that may raise pre- and in-service teachers' level of intercultural sensitivity and better prepare them to work with groups of students characterized by diversity. The general hypothesis of this research is that the workplace environment, which may be urban or rural, impacts the level of manifesting intercultural sensitivity. There are 6 specific hypotheses, each of them linked to the subscales of the questionnaire we have used. For example, the desire to interact.
Maybe Ioana, just one, because after that we will repeat it.
Yes. For example, the desire to interact in a constructive manner displays higher levels at urban background respondents. In the following slides, we will have data for each of these hypotheses and presented in tables, and we may look at them comparatively.
So, specific hypothesis 1, the desire to interact in a constructive manner displays higher levels at urban background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification of answers that illustrate the desire to interact in a constructive manner. And objective 2, comparative analysis of the answers in relation to the background of the teaching activity.
Here is the table with the average scores for the items that are part of the subscale desire to interact in a constructive manner. As we can see, in bold are the higher scores. The higher scores are for most items for the urban working background. Only for the item on giving positive answers while taking to a person from another culture, there we have a higher score for the rural environment.
Specific hypothesis 2, respect for cultural differences and diversity displays higher levels at urban background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification of answers that illustrate respect for cultural differences and diversity. And Objective 2, comparative analysis of the answers in relation to the background of the teaching activity.
In this table, we have the average scores for this subscale, respect for cultural differences and diversity. This subscale comprises 6 items, and for the majority, the scores are higher for the urban working environment. For one item, the score is equal, and for the item on whose culture is better is the rural respondents have a higher score.
A little bit.
Yes.
Specific hypothesis 3, confidence in interactions with people from other cultures display higher levels in urban background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification and answers that illustrate confidence in interactions with people from other cultures. And Objective 2, comparative analysis.
Like for the other hypotheses, we present the data in a table for each item to see the scores and compare them. This subscale contains 5 items, and here we have higher scores for both rural and urban working environments. The overall score here is for the rural environment. we should mention that some of the items in the scale needed to reverse the scores. So, for example, I feel confident when I interact with people from different cultures is an item that doesn't need a reverse score. But for example, I find it difficult to speak in front of people requires an inversed score. So these tables represent the final data with the scores calculated as indicated. And for this subscale, respect for confidence in interactions with people from other cultures, we have higher scores for the rural respondents, for the respondents working in rural backgrounds.
Specific hypothesis 4. Pleasure produced by interaction displays higher levels at rural background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification of answers that illustrate pleasure produced by interaction. And Objective 2, comparative analysis of the answers in relation to the background of the teaching activity.
This subscale of the questionnaire comprised 4 items. And here is an example of subscale where all the average scores are higher for the urban working respondents. They seem to draw a higher level of pleasure when interacting with people from other culture.
Specific hypothesis 5. Attention paid to interaction displays higher levels at rural background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification of answers that illustrate attention paid to interactions. And Objective 2, comparative analysis of the answers in relation to the background of the teaching activity.
This subscale comprised 3 items. And here we have for an item a higher score for the rural working respondents, but the overall score is higher for the urban working respondents.
So the hypothesis 5 is validated or not?
I don't remember how it was formulated, but it's invalidated.
Invalidated, yes, because it have to be much more in the urban background, I think. Specific hypothesis 6, avoidance of labels, stereotypes, and prejudices displays higher levels at rural background respondents. Objective 1, identification and quantification of answers that illustrate avoidance of labels, stereotypes, and prejudices. Objective 2, comparative analysis of the answers in relation to the background of the teaching activity.
This subscale comprised only 2 items. And here it's an example of items that needed a reversal of scores because it shows an attitude contrary to what intercultural sensitivity is about. And for example, I think people from different cultures have a more limited horizon, got a higher score from the rural working respondents, and also the other one. So here the higher score is for the rural working respondents, which also shows that they may have a tendency to show lower levels of intercultural sensitivity. Here we have the average scores obtained by the respondents with urban versus rural working background for each of the questionnaire subscales, and the final result on whether the specific hypotheses have been validated or invalidated. and we have the higher scores for the urban working respondents. The difference is very small, but it nevertheless enabled us to validate the special hypothesis number 1, 2, and 6, whereas the specific hypothesis number 3, 4, and 5 were invalidated. We may draw some conclusions while comparing the data. For example, it is worth noting that for the questionnaire dimension, the desire to interact in a constructive manner, there were highest scores recorded for the respondents with urban working background for most items. But for the item, I often give positive answers while talking to a person from another culture, where the respondents with rural working background achieved the highest scores. Although the differences between the answers to the questionnaire provided by the respondents from the two groups are quite small, they nevertheless reveal that the workplace environment impacts the level of manifesting intercultural sensitivity. And thus, we may also argue that the general hypothesis of our research, the workplace environment impacts the level of manifesting intercultural sensitivity, has been validated.
Finally, some conclusions. The results of our research represent an argument for future similar research to include larger sample groups. Although small, the differences indicate that the working background impacts intercultural sensitivity levels at teachers. Studies concerning educational matters and solutions to educational issues in Romanian context should approach the research problem by considering the two different contexts in which education takes place, namely urban and rural. Our result reveals the stringent need for educational measures and policies aimed at eliminating the gaps between the rural and urban educational working backgrounds in terms of teacher training as well as teaching and learning opportunities.
So, thank you for your attention.
And good luck to conference.